I'm not where I'm supposed to be. Going in
Hey, I'm Danielle
circles,
Davies, and you're
going
listening to
in
Roar, a
circles.
show that
I
amplifies
should
the
get
voices of women
away
breaking
from
barriers, leading
here.
change, and
There's a
making real
better
impact.
place for me,
Keep listening for bold
better
ideas and
place for
stories that
both.
inspire you to
Trying to
find your
play my
voice and make some
symphony,
noise.
but there's so much.
Take Back Trust is a direct to patient education and empowerment platform that helps people navigate and access reproductive health care in an increasingly restrictive landscape. Through clear, actionable resources, Take Back Trust equips individuals with the knowledge and tools they need to advocate for their rights and get the care they deserve, no matter the political climate. This is Danielle Davies. Welcome back to Roar, where we amplify the voices of those making an impact, because advocacy isn't one size fits all. Whether through activism, innovation, or in today's case, journalism, Roar is here to showcase the diverse voices and actions that elevate women in everyday life. Our guest today is Jennifer Bendery, a veteran congressional reporter for the Huffington Post and a fearless journalist who spent years holding those in power accountable. She covers everything from the halls of Congress to the Supreme Court, digging into the stories that shape our laws, our rights, and whether we realize it or not, our daily lives. The stories Jennifer covers impact us all, but with women's rights under relentless attack, her work's more critical than ever. From reproductive health care to the treatment of women in politics, journalism plays a vital role in exposing the truth, challenging misinformation, and shaping public discourse. Today, we're diving into the state of journalism, why it matters now more than ever, and how reporting the truth is, in itself, a form of resistance. Let's get into it. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, Danielle. Thanks for having me.
I'm just going to say right at the front that we're friends. And so if we start laughing maniacally, that's why. Um, Usually I try to reserve that for later if that's the
Old
case.
friends.
Yeah,
Old
we
friends.
are very old friends now.
Yes.
The older we get, the longer the friendship endures. So that's good. But this is serious because it actually is serious. And so thank you for taking the time to talk to us, because I know you're really busy and you're in DC and dealing with this stuff like on a daily basis. So I'm just going to jump right in because I also know you have a story Bible. Journalism is attacked like never before. And I also want to point out this will come out after the date, this podcast. So today, as we're talking, it's February 2025. And literally by the time this comes out, anything could happen. We don't even,
Correct.
there will be a
Is this note you're sharing right now going to be in the podcast?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a very meta moment. We're talking about time in this podcast episode at a different time when this podcast is going to air.
Yeah.
Got it?
Ironically,
Yes.
I
Okay.
spoke to an abortion doctor on the anniversary of the overturn of Roe v. Wade. So we had to mention that too, because it's like things are changing so quickly.
I can guarantee that whatever we talk about today, there will be a through line to April or May when this podcast comes out that is still true, but there's so much that's going to change even
Enormously.
between now and then. Yes.
Yeah. So today,
Today.
could you explain why a free press is so important? Could you talk to us a little bit about what the real world consequences of this are for women, whether it's in politics, healthcare, or just our basic civil rights? Like, why do we need free press?
Well, we need a free press because the free press is rooted in telling the truth, and it's rooted in facts. It's rooted in science, and it's still, I feel, the best job in the world, because your job is to go in and basically walk in. Somebody once put it that the job of a journalist is basically to walk into a room and look around and say, "What the hell's going on here?" and just like figure out what's going on in the room. And it made me laugh because it's so simple. But, you know, as a political journalist, I have access to senators and members of Congress, and I can go in and out of federal buildings, the White House, and, talk to the people in power. And there's nothing more important, especially right now, than speaking truth to power and asking hard questions and sharing what you're learning with millions of people who can read the things you're seeing. And if you're not in there asking powerful people hard questions, for example, like asking a Republican senator if they realize these mass firings at federal agencies are affecting people in their state, and maybe Mr. Republican senator from Louisiana Maybe you did vote for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be the HHS secretary, and maybe you don't really like that he's opposed to vaccines and raises skepticism about vaccines. But Mr. Senator, there are people in your state who are now scared because you just voted for this this person to be in charge of the HHS, the Department of Health and Human Services. People are scared about vaccine skepticism now being supported by the person in charge of the largest health agency. Mr. Senator, what do you have to say about that? You have a facility in your state that's one of the largest in the country for vaccine research. And, so you find through lines that resonate with people in power where they have to answer questions that they don't really want to talk about because it's revealing that there's, politics isn't everything. There's real people that are hurt and affected by everything happening in Washington. And if you don't push the people in Washington on that, then they're not going to talk about it.
It's an
That's a big part of our job. You get people to talk about hard things that hard realities that are about their own constituents being hurt by the very things that they're doing in Washington, and they don't want to talk about that. They just want to get reelected. So that's a big part of our job, I would say. You have to bring in the voices of real people and the effects on real everyday people that the decisions they're making in Washington are having and that they don't really want to talk about.
and why do you think it is? I mean, I think it's pretty apparent, obviously. It's pretty apparent to you and I, but also I hear from Republican Trump supporters who are like, no, obviously there shouldn't be the press in there because they're lying. They're lying. They're lying. We're the real truth. This is the real truth, but it's like a conspiracy theory. I mean, a girl that I don't want to knock anybody, but a girl that I knew last spring, I said something about the eclipse. Like I was like, oh, I missed it. Like I only got to catch a little bit of it. I didn't have the glasses. I stopped by my friends and she's like, I don't know about that. Like,
She didn't believe the eclipse was real?
no, no, that's also a bit of a conspiracy theory. So, people are coming at it from a lot of different angles, but I do know some that are like, no, the press is lying. The media lies. They're just after stories. And it's these conspiracy theorists, almost like RFK Jr. himself, that are really the speakers of truth. How do you
Mhm.
combat that yourself?
Well, it's not helpful that the president of the United States is the one who has pushed the phrase fake news, fake media, calling things lies that are very obviously not lies, and the fact that he lies constantly. So the concept of truth has become up for debate, which is terrifying. Um, the the idea that science is real is also in question from some Trump supporters and from Trump himself. That is terrifying. The questioning data, questioning things that are grounded in facts. It's gotten to the point where are stripped down to to core debates about facts and science and truth, which is almost like epistemological like debates. What is truth? What is life? What is what is death? Like what is being? But
Nothing you thought you'd be reporting on.
yeah, it's like it becomes weirdly philosophical, but it's not philosophical because there are facts. You might not like certain facts, but there are facts and there is data and science that backs up facts and sometimes science gets it wrong and that's science self-corrects and then people who work on science show more facts that create a new truth. But taking all that into consideration as a political journalist, um, I mean, you have to pace yourself through this time when everything you say is being scrutinized and attacked as lies. And I work for the Huffington Post, which, plenty of people who are Trump supporters like to just make fun of generally. Oh, HuffPost, PuffPost, that I didn't know HuffPost was still here. The lefty blog, blah, blah. And, I get it. People are just following Trump and the things that he says. People don't realize or care that, who say this, that HuffPost is a solid news site with, seasoned journalists. We won a Pulitzer. Like we have many awards for our news coverage. We're
Here you
We're
are having to
reporters.
qualify it though. Like you're actually having to say this. You're like, no, really? Like
I mean, I don't feel a need to say it, but these are the things that I know. So you after a certain point, you just prepare to withstand a constant flood of personal and professional insults every single day. And if you're a woman or if you're queer or if you're a person of color or if you have a disability or if you have maybe you adhere to certain religions that are not Christian. I mean, you become a target for people at least on social media, which is where I am often and I post all my stories on social media, I share them, I want people to read them. So of course I get responses on social media like X that are some are just really nasty. So you have to the importance of solid journalism in this moment could not be higher. I've been a journalist for 20 plus years, and this is the most important moment for real, solid, fact-based, hard-hitting journalism. And it is also the moment where journalists are facing the most headwinds. Professionally, our industry is being clobbered and cut left and right. There are racist, sexist, homophobic Nazis out there just constantly pummeling journalists with threats and insults. There's death threats that people get regularly. There's personal attacks on your appearance. I mean, you name it. Like at least in Washington, D.C., when you're covering politics, this is the kind of life that you unfortunately have to prepare for.
But it
Uh,
wasn't was it ever like this? Like you said, first of all, you've been doing this for 25 years and it's more important than ever. But was it ever this vitriolic towards journalists before? I mean,
well,
did
you
you
have
ever
to,
experience this level of hate?
it's gone up drastically when since Trump came onto the scene as a political figure. So going back to 2015, it's it's a combination of Trump fanning this stuff, and he's the person at the top. And what is the expression that the something about like the fish stinks from the head or something? What is the expression about a dead fish
I
stinks
don't know,
the
but
most in
something
the
rolls
head?
downhill. I don't know, but something else rolls
I
downhill.
mean,
But
the point is that when the president of the United States is actively and disgustingly and um, aggressively attacking the press and people personally within the press all the time and using his major platforms to do that, the people who support him feel emboldened to do it too. And so it just bleeds throughout everything. And it was not great covering the Tea Party era of Republicans in Congress, but you also have to factor in social media has changed a lot and become so much bigger. So there's more social media apps. There's more ways for journalists to put our stories out there, which means there's more ways for people to personally, directly engage with you. And in some ways, it's pretty nasty. So at a certain point, you just have to figure out how to get your stories out there and cut off people who are being like that. I mean, you can mute people on X, the website formerly known as Twitter has turned into a real hellhole. Like, it's pretty bad. There's a lot of journalists who have just left. The problem with that, and I understand why they have, the problem with that is that I have a fair number of followers there who are good, decent people who want to read the news, and I want them to see news. I want them to see our news, my stories, my colleagues' stories. I share stories from other news outlets that are really good. I want them to see it. I want people to see the news that is real news and how bad things can be or even good news. You know, I want people to see news that's actually real and happening in Washington. So I try to withstand some of the ugly stuff I get on there to keep pushing out real news that people I think deserve to know.
well, that sounds terrible.
It's pretty
Like,
bad. I mean, people it's also really stupid, Danielle. Like people will screenshot a picture of me from the internet somewhere and share it, like tweet it at me and be like, "Oh, like, are you a little boy?" Or like, "Oh, like, look at you. Are you Rachel Maddow?" Or, "Oh, like, should I look at this face? Should I believe you?" I'm just like, "Are you supposed?" like, I think you're trying to hurt my feelings or offend me or I'm not sure. Like, none of it is actually doing that, but it's very weird. And I know you're trying to be mean, so I'm just going to go ahead and mute you. But the way people come at you is also strange. Lots of typos and,
Lots of
and
typos.
nasty messages. Um, it's there is a lot of just sludge, to get through. But ultimately, again, I wake up in the morning and I think of other journalists. I know so many journalists in DC. We all do this. You wake up, it's a new day. You have your thick skin, and you go in the best you can to go find out what's happening in Congress. Go talk to senators. Go talk to members of Congress. Um, put out an email or a call out on social media for everyday people, anybody to just contact me because I'm working on X story. If you're someone who's affected by this, I would love to hear from you and see what kind of emails you can get from folks and talk to them on the phone and just connect everything.
That's what Ed knows a guy who is very, very conspiracy theorist, and he's like constantly trying to tell him stuff. Both of Ed's going back with him, and he's coming back with like, but no, this is the real news. That's not really the real news. And I'm like, have him. I'm like, just talk to 5 people. I'm like, just real people. Don't look at anything. Just make a call because I feel like this is nowhere where I was going to go with this, but like because we're so physically disconnected, a lot of people like, we're online so much. It's so you lose that. Like, how are you lose like the connection with humans and people and humanity to figure out what like the real problem. Like I've actually heard people say, well, this isn't affecting me, so it's okay. And I'm like if it's affecting someone. So do we have to
Yeah.
have we forgotten about that? I know that's like, we're at our cold hard screens. It's hard to be warm and fuzzy all the time, but like have we lost the ability to care about other people? It's
I do think that that empathy and compassion are kind of they're certainly like not a part of the Trump administration and everything that comes down from the Trump administration. For sure. It's a very cold, callous, cruel, hateful time in our in this administration. Trump is terrible. Like people all know this about him. He's got a lot of supporters, but there's certain things they see in him that they want to see. And he and the messages that he pushes out and the actions he's been taking already as president in second term are just cruel. I mean, I could list off several things he's doing right now that are just purely rooted in cruelty. There's no reason to cut 6 or 7,000 people arbitrarily from the Internal Revenue Service, which they just did yesterday, nationwide. These are not people in DC, like DC, so-called DC bureaucrats. These are people in Texas. These are people in New Jersey. These are people everywhere because they just want to show that they're making the government smaller in some way, but they're just firing people and then they're having to rehire them back because they realize they need them. It's just the cruelty is the point of what this administration's doing. And it's important for people to see that and to remember that these large numbers of people being fired as some evidence of Trump, delivering on a promise to shrink the size of the government. Those numbers are not just numbers. Each number is an actual person who lives somewhere around the country, not in DC, somewhere around the country who has a family, who has bills to pay, who has children, who has a member of their family who's elderly and they're trying to take care of. There's a lot of veterans who are losing their jobs right now because of these arbitrary cuts. Veterans, every single veteran has their own story about what they've done for this country and why, and the pride they feel in why they joined the military. I mean, every one of these numbers is a human, and that is 100% lost in the Trump administration's efforts to just carry out these mass firings. And it's excruciating. I have talked to a number of people who have been fired arbitrarily in the last month. Um, and each person's story is gut wrenching. Some people are like, this was the best job I ever had. I took an oath to the Constitution to take this federal job, working for the Treasury Department or working for the State Department or working for the VA or working for the Education Department. I work for the EPA. Time and time again, people are like, I took an oath to the Constitution to serve my country. I wake up every day feeling like I'm doing something for my country by going to work and trying to solve problems and make sure people get the services they need. And now I just got fired overnight because the Trump administration said, uh, based on performance, but I've always had strong performance reports. There's no evidence. I've never done anything that was flagged as anything to do with poor performance, but this is just the line that's being used to fire thousands of people. And it's just, these are real people. It's gut wrenching. It's not about politics, about like if someone's a Republican or a Democrat. It's like, these are just people trying to go to work and do a job they care about and that they're good at and getting thrown, kicked to the curb. And so your question was, you said something about empathy and compassion, and it is all tangled up in the problem with what's happening right now with the Trump administration. But I do
Like
think you're right too
from
that like the screens, like talking like this, I think, that keeps people apart when they're not meeting in person. When you are physically talking to someone in person, there's so many other things going on in your interaction. You can shake a hand, you can put a hand on a shoulder. When you can study body language more. There's all kinds of communication that happens in person that you don't get on a screen. And I think COVID really fucked us. Can you say bad words on your
yeah,
podcast?
yep.
Okay.
I
I
make
think
it to
COVID like really screwed us up because everybody had to retreat into their homes and be isolated for months, and people were scared and sick and dying, and we've emerged, but some things didn't bounce back, and a
and
lot of
the
people.
divisions grew even further then as well. It
Yeah.
was like you went in one way and you came out a lot further
Yes.
apart, you know?
Kids came out with, educational delays, and people came out socially awkward, like, people came out like.
Even kids came out, like, with new political views that they didn't
Yeah.
have. News was always on, the parents are watching, like, COVID rates, like, people are fighting about masks, and so kids came out. I remember when people could finally, like, go outside and ride bikes around, my son was riding around, and he had a mask on. I was like, "Wear the mask even on the bike." Like, I was just so nervous because I knew he was stopping and talking to kids and all this stuff, and somebody's dad saw him and was like, "Get that mask off your face, like, what do you have a mask on?" And I was like, I'm like, "Oh my god, it's even worse. Now we're including the kids, like,
Yeah.
in this." So, yeah.
Yeah. So I think there have been a few factors that have kind of driven people apart from each other, but like we were saying, between being online more and on screens versus in person, and COVID kind of screwed us all up. And then honestly, like the Trump administration coming in with the people that they're bringing in again, and people like Elon Musk, who's like jacked up on ketamine constantly and just making drastic, crazy calls about like where to make cuts in the federal government, and Trump just letting him do whatever. I mean, you put it all together, and there's just a lot of, it's not a very joyful, hopeful moment because it feels like it feels like a bunch of Nazis are in charge. I mean, you've got like Elon Musk doing his Nazi salute.
Yeah,
I saw Steve
come
Bannon.
on.
Steve Bannon
Come on.
was just at CPAC, which is a conservative conference, a big annual, very conservative, far right conservative conference. Steve Bannon, not to be one-ups by Elon Musk, just did it yesterday at this conference, the Nazi salute. Um,
Thank you for that news. Thank you for
I mean,
that.
it's just popping up everywhere. All the January 6th defendants just released en masse from prison. Now they're just, some of them have already been rearrested on other charges. I mean, it's the concept of law and order is being shaken. I mean,
Well,
it's
and
not a
that
great time.
it's not, and to make it even worse, I just read a statistic that, like, rape and violence against women is actually increasing for the first time in a long time, and I'm not saying well, I am saying that we have a rapist in the Oval Office and that our culture and how we speak about women has completely changed. Like, or what's acceptable has completely changed. I'm sure there were always people, and I know there were always people who may have thought this way, but the fact that it's so overt and so acceptable to speak in the way that we speak about women, and also the misinformation when it comes to issues like reproductive health and gender-based violence, that's completely skewed. People talking about post-birth abortions, which is nobody's killing live babies. So that's, that's it's just outrageous. So how are you seeing this playing out in your reporting, if at all? What are you seeing in terms of the effect on women, even in how they live their day-to-day lives? I went to a doctor's appointment recently. I went to a couple. I scheduled them all for the same period of time. So I would like get all my annual visits done. And one was like at this kind of new place and it was like very sterile. And the people who were walking in, like, it was like quiet. And all of a sudden I was gonna like, I felt uneasy, and I would never normally feel uneasy, and there was no reason for it except for what I'm hearing in the world, except for what I'm hearing about how we're treating women. Are you seeing
Mhm.
anything?
I mean, I think what I'm seeing is the burying of data. I think I'm seeing I watch I cover politics and government. So what I'm seeing is federal agencies disappearing data that that tells us things, real things about women's health and women's economic successes or not, or data around all things affecting women's lives is being some of it is being buried. One thing I'm thinking of right now is this is kind of a random example, but it's fresh on my mind. Um, Something that I have covered over the years is tribal issues. I try to pay attention to what's going on with policies that affect Native American communities and tribes, and um, violence against Native American women is really high, especially on reservations. It's the highest. The Indigenous women face the highest rates of domestic violence of any group. Um, It's been so bad that uh, for years, there's been a crisis, and it's been referred to as the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women for years, because Indigenous women are just being, for decades, Indigenous women have been essentially been picked up in remote areas and kidnapped and forced into human trafficking. And then eventually some are turning up murdered. And there's a connection between human trafficking and vulnerable women in remote areas. And it's been a thing for a while. Um, so it finally percolated up enough to where Congress passed legislation in the last several years, specifically to address the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women. There have been reports that have looked more deeply into what's going on, drawing connections between these women. Why are they disappearing? Where are they turning up? Blah, blah. Um, One bill that passed was called the Not Invisible Act. And I followed that bill because I do cover these things. Essentially, that required federal agencies to work together to come up with recommendations for how to stop this from happening, to push back on it, what law enforcement agencies can do to help. Um, so in the end, there was a mandated report about the Not Invisible Act. It was called the Not Invisible Act Commission Final Report. And all it was like months, if not years, of cross jurisdictional work between federal agencies talking together with tribes and federal law enforcement officials about what the best ways are to tackle this. And they put out a final report. It's a good thing, right? Like a report
Yeah.
available for all to see, like to understand this problem and what is being done, what can be done, signs to look out for, etc. Well, when the Trump administration came in January, this report suddenly disappeared and it is no longer available on the Justice Department's website. I only know this because somebody flagged it to me who worked on that report. And so I went to go find it because I happen to know this issue because I've covered tribal issues for a while. And it's true, it's a dead page now on the Justice Department website. And again, all it was is a final report that laid out all the work that had been put into this effort to try to address violence targeting Indigenous women. And this report is gone. And there's no reason to pull it down. I mean, I don't this is a microcosm of something bigger going on. But this report is a good example of this administration is trying to erase information and data that is about violence targeting, in this case, Indigenous women, violence against women generally, and of course, transgender people. They are just pulling data, erasing signs that transgender people even exist. I mean, they literally took the T off of an
Right.
LGBT memorial or it was like a Stonewall. I guess it was like a monument or some kind of tribute.
Yeah.
They literally erased the T. So it's just LGB memorial. And it's like, it's so petty to just literally go up and take a T off, but it is absolutely emblematic of the erasure of certain people and certain issues that this administration is 100% trying to carry out because they don't want people to pay attention to that. They want to erase the DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts of the Biden administration, but that's what they claim to be doing. But part of their modus operandi is to, like I said, with the Not Invisible Act report and the T being erased at this memorial site, the overarching problem here is that they're trying to erase things that affect things about women, things that are data about women, things that are helpful for understanding women's health or women's safety. They're just quietly disappearing these things from federal agencies' websites. That is one way that women are just, I would say that women are being hurt by what the Trump administration is doing across the board. They're
And
just
it's like
getting rid of
yeah,
data.
yeah, from the
They're
from the
getting rid of
top.
science. They're doing shit at CDC. They don't want people to talk about these things anymore. Not while they're in charge.
Which they seem to want to be forever. So there's that also. And I
Well,
don't
yes, there's that too.
so I don't want to be an alarmist, but when so I'm just gonna carry on because I don't want to be an alarmist. But it's really hard when you say those things because obviously, like, you're right, that's the tip of the iceberg. Somebody brought that to your attention. How many thousands of reports? How many things are we unaware of that are just not there anymore? And where are they going? Like, that's it. It's delete. Like, is there backup? What are they doing with and
I mean, and to be sure, in the one example I gave, the Not Invisible Act Commission's final report, that is one report from one specific issue um, that is no longer on the Justice Department's website. It's the Justice Department's own report, and it's no longer on the Justice Department's website. I am certain that you could find that report somewhere. It's not gone forever, all copies disappeared. But my point is that that is just one little example of something that is happening across agencies where very specific types of information is being erased. And the theme is that it is again, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but it is across the board. They are erasing science and data and information about women's health, about transgender people's health and transgender people's service in the military. Um, Never mind reproductive rights. Who knows what the fuck they're doing at the Health and Human Services Commission right now, uh, with RFK Jr. in charge. But they're going to be coming for vaccine. I mean, like the vaccine skepticism that RFK Jr. is going to be fanning. That is not specifically an assault on women per se, but I spoke to women should be alarmed because there's a pediatrician who serves in Congress. Her name is Congresswoman Schreier. She's from Washington State. Um, and again, she's a pediatrician too. And I spoke to her last week about RFK Jr. being confirmed to lead HHS. Her number one concern with him being confirmed is that because of his powerful post, he oversees all of the federal health agencies like CDC, NIH, all of it. Her number one concern is that even a whiff of him raising questions about the safety of vaccines, just not even like a full-on assault, just a hint of skepticism about the safety of vaccines is going to have ripple effects nationwide on moms and parents wondering whether they should not get them for their children. And all it takes is a little bit of a dip in the country's population to stop getting them, to fall below what she described as like the 90% threshold that we require for like herd immunity.
right.
And then you can have suddenly you're going to start potentially having outbreaks of totally preventable viruses and sicknesses that should never have happened. And her
Isn't there like
greatest
a big measles outbreak right now, even in
yeah, and
Texas?
the measles outbreak is already on my radar. That in Texas, that should not be happening. That is entirely preventable. Um, but this congresswoman's biggest concern is that we're going to start seeing epidemics of things that like measles, like polio. She's like, and she was like, you know what? I'm scared that it's going to have to come to people learning the absolute worst way possible that vaccines are safe because they're going to suddenly realize that their grandma gets like pneumococcal pneumonia, which is treatable, and then she's going to die. And your
Yeah.
neighbor's kid is going to get the measles and die. And your friend's children down the street, someone's going to get polio, like because they're just not totally sure they're comfortable with getting that vaccine. Because I mean, even the nation's top healthcare policy person,
Isn't sure
RFK
about
Jr.,
that.
he's saying that maybe that we should re-examine those. And just that vague hint of question, she said, is hugely problematic.
Can I
So
just
these
tell
are the things that if you're talking about women
you?
and like what what this administration is doing about, that could be hurting women. What I look at as a journalist about what's happening with women, it's all connected. It's like I worry about I worry about these things every day. I worry about the vaccine skepticism picking up. I worry about families now. It's not like moms are the only ones in charge of children, but I worry about moms suddenly not wanting to maybe get that one vaccine. I worry about people not realizing that violence against women is a major epidemic because we don't have enough information being lifted up anymore. I worry about women being shut out of certain things, educational opportunities, because um, certain diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are being thrown out the door when there's clearly inequality and inequities in our culture. I mean, women are affected across the board by what's going on. It's as a journalist, the things I'm watching are what people like RFK Jr. are doing, and things like reports disappearing that provide people with data and uh, understandings of real life things that happen to women.
And you're talking about this, like things disappearing. You can't help but think of like the old George Orwell book, 1984. But it's crazy because it will change our very culture in terms like there's a show. It's a TV show called Never Have I Ever on Netflix. It's a Mindy Kaling's show, and my daughter really loved it. Actually, I really loved it also, and I think you would really love it too. You should totally watch it. Not she's too little.
Okay.
Anyway, so we watched it, and at one point, there's a girl, and she's in love with like kind of the stereotypical dumb jock, right? He's very handsome and he really doesn't know anything. And she's an Indian girl. And so she's not allowed to have this boyfriend. Her mom's strict. She's not supposed to have any boyfriend at all. And she's trying to get him to stay away from her house. So she's like, you can't come. You can't take me home. My mom's sick. She has polio. And it's a joke. It's obviously a joke that he doesn't get that she doesn't have polio because he's like this dumb guy. And when he finally does meet the mom, he's like, oh, I'm sorry about your polio. So like the joke continues. But very in the too distant future, this is not going to be a joke. Like it will go down. I mean, I don't think people understand the level that this will trickle down into their lives. Like it will be everything. It's affecting everything. And the women that I speak to in all different areas, like in doing different things and helping their communities or doing things on behalf of other women in every avenue, it's happening. Like in every field, like I talk to a lot of femtech people, women in women's wellness, and their big thing is always that women are 51% of the population, but we didn't start doing studies on women's health until 1987. Until 1987, they weren't required to be part of testing, which is for lots of reasons, but also crazy, right? Because we're not just women in men's bodies. We have different bodies. We have different issues. Our hearts, we are the number one, we die of cardiovascular health in a different way. There are different sign signals, etc. So
Yes.
last year was like a record year for investment in what they call femtech, which is the umbrella term for like women's health, like innovation. And that record amount was 2% of the overall healthcare funding. And it's like this is just gonna So, and I have friends now who are working on projects where scientists are like, unfortunately, I can't back you on this. I can't do the research that's required for this because now I no longer am allowed to research this. So it's going to come in every single part of our lives is affected. And so that's the one thing I wanted to say. But the other thing I wanted to say is, what about the women in Congress? Like, so we're dealing with this, and you would think you want to say, hey, you're also a woman. Do something about this. Like, say something, do something. Don't let this guy in. Don't let Elon Musk do this. Like, you have to have some power in Congress. What are you seeing? Are you seeing a shift in how women lawmakers are treated? Are they not being acknowledged, or are they just not stepping up? I know there are plenty of people stepping up, and I appreciate all of them, but I mean, there's just such an overwhelming amount of bad news. You have to think, who is doing something about this? So, what are you seeing in terms of Congress and the women there?
Well, I think you have to break that down a little bit because there's women in Congress. But you break it down first in the House versus the Senate, two
Okay.
totally different chambers with like just a very different even culture going on within those two chambers. Because the House is like a zoo of fucking children. The Senate is where the more mature,
I'm a sticker
refined,
out.
senators more thoughtfully think about policy. And the House is just like, give me that, give me that. So it's very different scene, okay? Culturally,
Right.
you just have to know that. So then you've got women in who are Democrats and then Republicans in both chambers. So that's also a different situation. Um, Collectively, I would say there is not a unified sense of women all through Congress being unified on anything. They're just not. I mean, you've got Marjorie Taylor Greene in the House, and you've got like I don't know Elizabeth Warren in the Senate. I mean, could you?
Right. Right.
What could they possibly ever agree on? Yeah. So there's that. But I would say that generally, because Democrats don't have any real power right now. They're not like absolutely helpless, but they're not in the majority in either chamber. They don't control the White House. So they're basically in there fighting back against stuff whenever they can based on the rules. I would say that in the Senate, what you're gonna see is publicly, uh generally I think you will see I mean, Democrats generally, men and women, are writing letters. There's a lot of letters flying right now, a lot of letters about concerns, concerns, very concerned, being written by Democrats, women and men in the Senate to the leader, like cabinet secretaries at the EPA or at HHS saying, you know, dear Secretary Kennedy, we are very concerned about what rules you're going to push through that affect women's access to abortion. So I'm just making this up, but like there's a lot of letters that are coming from women and
Like,
men.
there's correspondence.
There's a lot of corresponding
Right.
happening. But generally Democrats are writing a lot of letters and having little like rallies with angry federal workers to show like concerns and um to show visibly that like they look like they're fighting, right? Because
Okay.
you can't
Right.
do a
Right.
ton in the
Right.
minority.
Right. What
So
are you
they're
going to do?
showing up in front of TV cameras saying, "We're gonna fight." And they're writing a lot of
A
letters.
lot of TikToks. Seeing a lot of
Yes.
TikTok.
It
Yeah.
you know, that's not worth nothing, but it's still that's not changing a ton. I honestly don't know what a lot is that they could be doing, but they can't do it.
What about, like, I know Susan Collins sided with the Democrats in the
Okay. So I
RFK.
was just talking about the Democrats. Now let's talk
Okay.
about the women Republicans who are in the majority. What you're seeing mostly, let's talk about the Senate, where it's the more highbrow lawmaking. Um, you've got a handful of senators in there who are Republicans who are a little bit squishy and sometimes will speak up about something that's really obviously bad and wrong. Um, the big names that usually get thrown around are Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski.
Right.
Um, Susan Collins is sort of jokingly known as the one who often has concerns. Like she will say, "I'm concerned about this genocidal campaign." I mean, she'll like it doesn't even matter, like, almost what is going on. She will have concerns. And she is sort of notorious for airing concerns about something and then not actually following through with a vote that
And
matches
quickly,
concern
didn't she? I remember during the Kavanaugh, I remember her having concerns and then throwing her
and
vote
then
in.
voting for him
Yeah.
and giving a speech on the Senate floor about why she's voting for him. So that's Susan Collins in a nutshell. A Democratic senator once told me that um, Susan Collins is great at being there when you don't need her. And what that means, and it's true, she will show up and vote with Democrats on something every now and then when it doesn't actually affect the outcome of the vote. But she'll go on record voting with them. She will not be the one that takes the stand. So that's
Got
Susan
it.
Collins. Lisa Murkowski is probably the strongest ally that women and uh, people who have concerns with the Trump administration have in the Senate. She will actually buck her party. She will buck the Trump administration. She will speak publicly about things that Trump is doing that are really bad and dangerous and damaging. Um, so she's the one Republican woman I would say in Congress, honestly, in both chambers, who comes to mind,
Wow.
who will stand up and say and actually do things. Vote, use her vote.
So how long do you think she'll be there? Because I mean, like, look at Liz Cheney.
I mean, I don't know, but well, Liz Cheney was in the House, and that's a different
Yeah.
game than being in the Senate.
But I
Senators
mean,
want.
I think had she fallen in line, wouldn't have had to probably worry, right? I mean, she's a
Well, again, it's different in the House and Senate because every 2 years you're up for reelection in the House. Every 6 years you're up for reelection in the Senate, and senators are more. It's just a different. It's a different game. It's a different election process. So you're pretty comfortable in the Senate for several years
okay.
because you don't have to run again. And Lisa Murkowski is pretty popular back home. And she's also very good at winning because every state is different. She has kind of a unique base of supporters of Democrats, independents, and moderate Republicans back home. So she knows her voters, she knows her constituents. Alaska doesn't have that many people and they all know her. So everybody's unique politically. Everybody brings something different and has a different voting base. But all this to say, Lisa Murkowski truly, as I run through people in my mind, she is the only Republican I can think of in the House or the Senate who's a woman who will actually stand up and call things out that are destructive and not Republican or Democrat, just truly like dangerous things to do and vote accordingly. So
She's the only one in both the Senate and
she's
Congress.
the only one I can think of right now. Yeah. I mean, in the Senate, for sure. In the House, where there's, 435 people, a lot more people in there. I mean, women are already, there are already much fewer women in there than men. And so then you work with that base. And all the women I can think of in there who are not Democrats, who are women, are either most of them just stay quiet. They stay quiet and they vote. They vote with the party line. You don't hear Republican women speak out against Trump about anything to do with Trump. And again, it's not about just like, speaking out against Trump just to, speak out. It's like when something is legitimately rising to the surface that is really scary and dangerous for millions of people that has nothing to do with being a Republican or Democrat. People just stay quiet. They publicly they will not say anything. And now, of course, there are stories. There's plenty of reporting that suggests, like behind the scenes, Republican women and men, some are raising concerns with the administration, are hearing feedback from their constituents that is not good. People are scared and angry about things the Trump administration is doing, but they are not publicly going to talk about it because they don't want to be seen publicly as breaking from Trump because and then it gets down to like, well, are they just a bunch of cowards? Like they just are only focused on reelection. I would say for the most part, yes. I also do think there's an element of fear that goes beneath that. I think that some people are scared of being physically attacked. I think that some Republican members, I've heard and read in some cases that some have faced death threats themselves. They don't want to put themselves in a position where they will face potentially death threats or violent attacks if they break with Trump. So there's this other element now of not just cowardice, but a darker.
Legitimate fear. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm not saying that they're all doing this and operating this way, but I absolutely think that is an element here. And I know I've read in a couple places that privately some will say, "Look, I don't wanna I'm I'm afraid to essentially step out of line because I don't wanna risk being physically harmed." I mean, that's terrifying.
That is terrifying. And it all, when you said they're just quiet, like that's like the most alarming thing I feel like you've said this whole entire time, which is crazy.
They
Because
are
you're
quiet. They don't wanna say anything publicly that will show that they are breaking from Trump. And you can chalk it up to just like I said, you can chalk it up to like, "Oh, I don't wanna say anything. I don't wanna look out of line and make myself a target for getting primaried by somebody more to the right of me." But I also, perhaps on another level, in some cases, I think people are scared of what it would mean for their own physical safety or for getting certain threats. People get death threats constantly as members of Congress.
but the thing is, I mean, I think people to some degree have always been, if you're in the public eye, you have I remember being a kid and being like, I want to be famous. And then John Lennon got shot. I was like, no, no, like I don't want anything to do with this. So there's probably an element of that that's always been, but now people are actually going through with it. They attempted to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. Nancy Pelosi's husband was attacked in his home. Like physical attacks are happening to our elected politicians. And really it's happening to the women, like Nancy Pelosi's husband, but it was the attack on Nancy Pelosi.
I mean, women certain I would not be surprised at all if women in Congress get much more threats than men just because sexism and patriarchy. But I mean, yes, someone tried to assassinate Trump twice. Uh, but I think that is part of something bigger where I mean, there's all these moving pieces to this, right? Like gun control has been rolled back in all kinds of red states and counties and this administration is certainly pro-gun and not a fan of having gun safety, and, you pair that with, like, ratcheted up rhetoric about violence and the president himself saying, vowing to hurt punch and hurt people and threaten people, um, and then his supporters feel emboldened to do the same and walk around with guns and all. Don't forget about January 6th, 2021, the actual insurrection that we had at the Capitol building. Those people are all out of jail now because of Trump. And so there's different pieces to this that are painting a picture of a much more violence friendly, gun friendly, anti woman, anti black, anti trans, anti brown skinned uh, world, a culture that we live in right now. And you can trace that into what the administration is doing at agencies. Like I was saying before, it's tied into certain reports disappearing now about women or about violence against women or about trans people or um, efforts to just make things not exist anymore and open up the public sphere to only talking about um, disenfranchised white men who feel left behind, and now is their chance to feel emboldened to pour their rage out into the world and treat everybody else like shit.
It all sounds super like like a supervillain. Like there's like this giant nefarious plan. And I don't know if you have any insights on what that plan is. Of course, my brain is like going, I mean, and a lot of people are like, that's it. I'm leaving the country. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. There's a lot of like, there's a lot of theorizing about what is the end goal here for the Trump administration and how that's going to affect everybody else. But what do you think people should be paying attention to right now? Like, if you had to limit it to three things, like, what do you think we should be paying the most attention to at the moment? If you can even address, I mean, there's so many things. That's the problem. There's so many things. Our direction is so split because it's like whiplash. Every day you're finding out something else. So where are you keeping your focus? What do you recommend?
Well, you're right. That is part of what's going on here. The idea is that the Trump administration and his surrogates want to flood the zone, right? They're trying to flood us with constant information and overwhelm people with with drastic, harmful decisions over and over and over again to the point where people can't process it all and start to feel defeated and overwhelmed and cynical and tap out. And this is a playbook that is how authoritarian leaders take hold. I mean, there is a playbook and this is it. You wear everybody down to the point where they're just broken down and cynical and just give up. And to me, I think the way I approach this as a journalist covering it, which is entirely different than just a person living in this. It is waking up every day and specifically looking at it all day long and talking to people.
Yelling yourself daily.
Yes, and
You're
talking to
like,
people
"Oh, God."
who have the ability to affect change but don't.
Oh,
Yeah. And I think to me it's a matter of pacing yourself and not letting it break you down. You have to, for anyone trying to consume all this news all the time, and a lot of it is scary, objectively scary and dangerous and harmful and cruel because again, the cruelty is the point to certain people. I think the thing I would encourage people to do going forward is pace yourself and don't let it get you down. Don't, like in The Handmaid's Tale, there's a kind of nonsensical phrase, but that is like the mantra for The Handmaids, which is it's in Latin, but the translation is "Don't let the bastards get you down," and that is what keeps Offred and all the other handmaids going as they fight to break, um, to be free and to free women from the dystopian world that they have been thrust into. So, in that vein, I think people can get through this by taking things one day at a time and grounding yourself with your family and your friends and remembering joy and doing things in your life that are joyful and taking breaks from trying to take it all in and then coming back and taking it. Just pick something in this that really gets to you and drill down into it a little bit and try to have an effect on that thing instead of trying to do it all. um and I do think something's going to give. uh, I'm not someone who subscribes to this idea that it's over, democracy is gone, because some people feel that way right now, like this
yeah.
is the end, and I get it. I absolutely get it. I also think that there are still checks in place to stop at least some of this, and I do think we're gonna end up with a huge mess that people are going to have to pick up the pieces from to move forward. I don't think it's the end. I think people have to be strong right now and speak up when things aren't right and, and pace yourself because things are going to shift again. They always shift. This is the pendulum swinging into the absolute worst place, and I think it's gonna get worse right now. I do. I think people are gonna have to feel real pain. I think people are gonna die, unfortunately. I'm not trying to uh, paint the most depressing picture ever, but if we keep going at this rate, people are going to start dying from not getting vaccinated. People are going to have botched abortions. People are going to have, um, people
You're
are leaving.
already.
I know, but it's going to, I feel like it's got to get worse. People are going to start getting sick with things they should never have gotten because they should have been vaccinated. People's food isn't going to be as safe to eat anymore because we're scaling back people at the FDA. People are going to not have medicines for things because science has been gummed up and shackled up from progressing. Um, these are going to have real world effects and consequences that are ugly. And I feel like things have to get even worse for people to see it and feel it before people are like regular people will be like, okay, this is not okay. We need help. So I guess your original question was, what should people focus on? Well, I would say focus on the people around you. Like, remember, this is real people who are scared, and um, we all want the same thing, right? We all want to have healthy, happy families, and to be able to pay our bills and to enjoy life before we all die. So, what do we need to do to take care of each other?
You're like so first of all, you've always been like this. We've always laughed a lot together, and like I really attribute that to you because I will get like morose in 2 seconds. You make me laugh, and so we laugh together. But you always are an optimist. You always, or at least that's how you appear to be. You appear to be an optimist and have this optimistic view of things. Like you don't think it's the end. You think it's going to be a struggle, but you don't think it's the end, and all this stuff. How do you How do you make that work with people who are like actively cheering on this type of destruction? Like, how do you, and this is totally personal. So if you want me to just delete it, I can. But
Okay.
like, how do you handle, I have people in my life that I know are still supporting this administration. And, maybe it's just with their vote, but it's probably with their wallets. And there's a lot of different ways they can support it. They're outspoken, et cetera. And I mean, it's affecting a lot of relationships for people. I think the first time around, it was less so because people were like, okay, anybody can make a mistake once. We've all been guilty of like liking someone that you're like, oh God, like what was I thinking? But a second time is when you see the damage that's been done, when you see the January 6th insurrection and you see the attacks on democracy and what happened, and then you support them again. It's actually mind-boggling. So, and I know you're in like DC has its own kind of liberal bubble, but you're dealing with actual lawmakers that are supporting this. How are you, like you said, how are you interacting with these people that could make a change but choose not to?
I've been doing this for a long time.
Does
So
that mean you're totally burnt out and want to just smash it?
no, no, it means that I have talked to Republicans in Congress and Democrats in Congress who on almost every possible policy issue you can imagine, I have covered it over the years. I've watched them new people come in, old people leave. I've watched the reshuffling of the decks. I've watched different parties resume control and then lose control. The other party taking control, then that party losing control, and it flip-flopping between the 2 chambers and the White House. Like, I've seen a lot, and I think that this is a more a scarier, darker time than I've seen in the past, but it is still the same players, and so there's a lot of things that they say privately that are not being said publicly, and I think when you cover them, you start to get a sense of what those things are that are private. It's just a question of what's it gonna take for them to say it publicly. And this is not a defense of any of them at all, but I think something's gonna give. I think that even a handful of Republicans are gonna be in the Senate and in the House. There's little tiny signs of it happening already, and it's only February. Um, but that's because there's been such drastic, horrible, far-reaching, actions taken already. So, of course, they're being pushed into uncomfortable places as politicians. But, uh, some people will just never fold, and they'll just go down with the ship. But there is a squishy area where just enough of them, I think, eventually are going to snap, because in the end, they're going to be hearing back home from people who are really hurting to the point where it's going to become deafening. And the fear of standing up to Trump, I have to believe is they're gonna ultimately listen to what their constituents are saying. So people at home who are constantly, if people are increasingly suffering at home, I think that senators and members of Congress are gonna hear it, and they'll be privately talking about it with each other. And then at some point, I've just at the rate things are going, it's only been a month, but it's been one hell of a month of massive, uh, destruction within the federal government. I do think that something's gonna give. You can't operate like this all the time. You just can't. The government can't take it. Senators and members of Congress have to go home and hear shit at home from their constituents. There was a viral video from last night that just happened to one member who went home where people were in a town hall. I think this was a Pennsylvania member, I can't remember, but a Republican member, where people at a town hall were basically screaming at him, like, what Doge Elon Musk's Doge is destroying our community. Like, what are you doing? Like, you represent us. Don't let this happen. And this was at a town hall when a member is hearing directly from the people who voted for him. So I think that I think something's going to give. I think something's going to have to break. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know who is going to step up in the Republicans, but just enough of them are going to have to. And I think at some point we'll get there. I just don't know when, and how much damage will have to have happened by then. But you're already seeing little signs. You're seeing little signs of it already. A couple Republicans have said things very defiantly clashing with Trump about Ukraine, for example, because Trump called Zelensky a dictator and not Putin. And it is clearly like some serious gaslighting and distortion happening by Trump. So some Republicans who are in foreign policy are like, I can't, even they are like, that's not true. That's absolutely not true. We stand by Ukraine. I don't know, the president is wrong. And that might sound like an obvious thing to say, but the fact that they will say it publicly is something. It's something.
It is. I wish it didn't come down to, and I just, wish it were a whole idealistic world where it didn't come down to your constituents, but your conscience, where you're like,
Yes.
hey, this is just wrong, like it or not, it's just wrong. Like, but I guess we don't really have a lot of that.
If I've learned anything in doing this for so long, it's that the number one thing that drives virtually every single member of Congress and both parties across the board is the need to get reelected. You can have strong principles or not, and some do. And I value when people do have strong values. But ultimately, in the vast majority of cases, the one thing, not all cases, but the vast majority of cases, the one thing driving all of them is the need to get reelected. That's it.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
just great.
I
It's
don't
like
say
the
that
love-
cynically. I don't say it cynically. I say it as like a fact. Like I see it. And yes, you can have convictions. And yes, there are cases of people being like, fuck it, maybe I'll lose reelection over this, but here's what I'm going to do. 95% of the time, it is about getting reelected. And
and I
when
know that
you realize that through parties, through
Yeah.
different members, both chambers, everything, then you start to see like, okay, well, what is your biggest threat to getting reelected? Oh, it's that you're not doing anything about Doge slashing people's jobs in your communities and them all being scared and asking your office what's happening and please help me. And I voted for you last time and I thought you would be there for me and now you're not. Like that shit gets in their ears. That's the shit that will make them suddenly have a change of heart.
Well, what my takeaway from this is, then do not, like, this is not a time to be quiet. Like, this
Absolutely
is
not. No. Nope.
situation. You show up.
People should take care of themselves first off. This is a very difficult time for millions of people. Job wise, emotionally, all the things. People need to take care of themselves right now. Make sure they're okay. That said, this is the time to make noise. This is the time to make your politicians know exactly where you stand and why, especially if you voted for them and if you're not happy with what they're doing. This is the time to flood the zone with your feedback because they listen to their constituents. They'll listen to constituents more than outside groups, more than reporters. I mean, they listen to the people who voted for them. You didn't vote for your elected official and you still are sharing stories with them about being hurt by things happening by this administration. They're listening.
Thank you for that. That gives people, because it's like, it's very easy, I think, to feel hopeless.
Of course.
That's like a tangible thing we can do. Like we can do this. People, we can do this. Like,
I mean, the protests, the rallies, the flood of messages to elected officials at all levels, that stuff matters. I don't say that in a cheesy way. Like it actually has an effect. If you keep doing that, it has an effect. It wears people down. It wears down the people who you're trying to reach because they see it. If they get one message from you saying like, hey, can you tell me what's going on? Thanks. That's one thing. But if you're like, hi, this is who I am. I'm in your district. I lost my job. My neighbor is disabled and is no longer able to access their Social Security benefits because of some computer glitch. I think, I was reading about Elon Musk tapping into Social Security uh, systems, and now I can't, things that you just tell them what's happening to you, and if it's not good, they're gonna listen. They hear it, they get it. I'm saying this with broad brushes, but it's
Because when
true. If
they're
their constituents' concerns, when they start to pile up, that's a problem for them. And what do they care about more than almost anything? Getting reelected. So that's where you get them where it counts. That gets their attention for sure.
okay, you've actually this is good because I definitely woke up today thinking like, "Oh, what's today?" You're like, "What is today gonna happen?" So wait, how
Yeah,
do you
what fresh hell awaits me?
what
I
now?
wake up every morning, Danielle.
I know, and then you go impale yourself at it. At
I
least I have
do.
the luxury
And
of
I
being
come home and stare at the ceilings.
don't. Wait, and this is the last thing. What drives you to keep going? And how can we support you so you do keep going? Because the last thing we
Well,
need
my
is you.
Venmo account, is kidding.
I'll share it. I'll share it.
No, please don't. Um, what keeps me going? This you have to keep going. You're just gonna lay down and die? You have
I
to
mean,
keep
your
going.
job. Like, what keeps you doing this? Because you could leave, right? You could, just like so many people are talking about. People leave the country. People are, I've seen all over the place which are the best countries to go to, which is good for women of color, which is good for this, which is good for that. My father has grandparents from Ireland. That's our track. Like, everybody's got a thought in their head, whether they are doing it or not. They thought, well, what if, right? You're
Mhm.
not just living through it. You're every day, like you said, going down there and interacting with these people. And so what is driving you to continue a career in journalism right now? There's nothing stopping you from switching careers, going into finance, like a finance role. But so like what's driving you to keep going?
I still think it's the best job in the world. You go up to powerful people and you push them on things that they don't wanna talk about because they have to be accountable to the people who put them in there in the first place. To me, it's speaking truth to power. I love that. It feels good. It feels like you're challenging people who are telling you something that is bad and expecting you to just accept that. And I know a lot of people read, the Huffington Post has a huge platform, and it's not all progressives. There's a lot of conservative people who read us too. And I want people to know what's going on because if I don't do it, who's going to do it? You know, uh, we need people to do it, and there's no one else coming, Danielle. We're in it. We're in it.
Yes.
So
Thank you for doing it.
if I'm in this position, I have this job and I've been doing it for a long time. I'm good at my job. I know how to do this. I know these people, and it's a really fucking scary time, and it's depressing and overwhelming, and it does feel like you just want to give in to hopelessness. It's also, I happen to be in a job right now where I can go up to the people who can do something and push them on why they're not doing anything. And that feels good because most people can't do that. And I want to do that. And I want people to know what happens when I go try to do that. And what do they say? I want people to see that because they
I
think
wanna see it. Keep going. Thank
that's what
you.
I'm saying. Like, if I can get in there and ask these people questions about, like, hey, did you know that vote you just took? You just basically like voted against your own state. You voted against your own district because what you just did is put someone in charge of something who has explicitly said they're going to gut. I'm just making this up, but like they're going to gut funding for cancer research. Did you know that, you have the largest cancer research institute in the whole country, Senator? Why would you support that person knowing that they're going to gut something that's going to directly hurt your community? Why did you do that? And they're not going to volunteer that information themselves. You have to push them.
Wait, I
Then
got a
they're on the
question.
spot in front of a reporter. Like, what are you gonna do? Literally walk away? Sometimes they do. Sometimes like,
Sometimes they
Gotta
do. I've
go, got a
seen
meeting." They pretend to be on the phone, but like
comment, no
somebody
comment.
has to push them on this stuff, and then they answer your question, and then you write about it, and like a million people read your article, and they're like, "What the fuck, Senator?" And then that senator's like, "Shit," like, and then now you start to see stories about like Senator so and so says they regret voting for this nominee. That's been happening, and that's Democrats too. Some Democrats have been voting for some of Trump's cabinet secretaries, and like a week later, they're being pushed by reporters to say, "Why'd you do that? That person is now doing this." And now there's at least 2 or 3 senators who are Democrats who have said, "I regret voting for the VA secretary. I regret voting for this secretary. I shouldn't have done that. I'm not voting." So, is it stupid that they voted for these people and a week later saying, "Whoops, I shouldn't have done that"? Yes. But what does that tell you that they're saying that? Well, it means that, like, someone's watching them and realizing what they're doing is going to harm people that these senators claim to be protecting, and now they're being called out on it. So now they have to answer for that, and now they're saying, "Okay, yeah, I made a mistake." There you go. Now everybody can see. This senator just said they made a big mistake, which is rare to see, by the way. They don't like to admit mistakes. And that they're not, and then they get called out. It's about being held accountable. And these are powerful people who need to be held accountable. That's it.
Exactly, exactly, and that's why we need the free press to do this.
Yes.
Hold people accountable.
Yes.
That
And it's pretty simple. It's not about like what is truth. It's like literally go up to someone and start talking to them, write down what they said, and then tell everybody else what they said. Like that's it. That's it.
yeah, there's no spin. It's when
There's
there's a
no secret
spin.
sauce.
Right, right.
Literally talking to people. I asked this question and you said that. And then I wrote it down on a piece of paper and then I put it over there so you all can see it. That's it. You just have to know the right questions to ask. That's it. And by right, I mean informed. That's the whole job.
That is the other side of it, but that's a whole other hour.
Yes, you just have to be an informed person asking questions. You have to be curious. Be curious and be informed and go ask questions that pop up that you think are
There's
important.
there's a lot of, like, independent journalism right now, and I'm not knocking it because there's a lot of, like, Jessica Valenti writes an Abortion Every Day, Substack, which I subscribe to, and it's chock full of information, and she has been a reporter in various places, so I trust her word, I trust where she's coming from, but it's hers. She can
Right.
do with it what she chooses to do. If tomorrow she decides it's Rainbow Day, then tomorrow it's Rainbow Day, according to her followers, like, it's whatever it is. She's hold to no standard, but the standard that her community holds her to.
Right.
So that's also the same from the flip side. Like you're having people like super right wing lunatics coming out with their own,
That's
their
right.
and so that's the problem with just completely independent pieces.
Yes. Yes.
You have to be listening to the right people. And how do you determine who those people are? Just out of curiosity. Like for me, I'm like, okay, this is a real person. I've connected with this person on LinkedIn. We've talked. This is where they wrote. Like this is their history. Yes, I will look at their newsletter. I'm not just gonna get the newsletter of some lunatic. But
Right.
if there's a thing for people to look for, do you recommend anything?
I mean, the standard is like because you're right, the amount of misinformation and disinformation now being circulated all the time on the internet, but also on like Fox News and other like streaming services. Like, how do you figure out where to get your news from? How do you know where it's like real? And by real, I mean like based in facts and like actual like informative research, like things that are based in things that we can believe in, right?
Yeah.
Um, the kind of the rule of thumb is like, well, first of all, start with places that have a masthead, like that have a full blown staff, not just some dude in his closet. Not to say that like a dude in his closet can't produce some
Hey,
good
I'm
story.
like a dude in a
I
closet
mean,
right
if you're a chick in a box, but having a masthead for starters is like a real news outlet. You have a publisher, you have a staff, you have editors, you have um
fact
like
checker.
yeah, fact checkers. I mean, so that's a good starting place uh for a real news outlet, but of course some places have a masthead that they put out stories that are not based in facts. And so for me personally, um I read people's stories. I read a lot of news articles and then I work backwards. Like, oh, that was a really good piece. Um by so and so. Like they talked to people who are academics in that piece to back up points they were making. So that shows me that they care about education and science and data backing up things you say. Um, and they talk about issues that are relevant to what things that are being discussed right now, like in the general, national conversation. I care about issues that are popular in the conversation right now, what's on people's minds. So this person is on top of like what is currently being, a hot topic. I'd like to know more about what people are saying. So for me, I just look, I read news, I read articles from the standards like the New York Times, the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, etc. But then, like you were saying, the people who have their own subscriptions to like their blogs or like their newsletters. Um, I read through a lot, but it's the ones that speak for themselves. And it's not like I'm looking for a certain point of view on anything, like a bias. I'm looking for a solidly reported piece or a particularly insightful perspective on things that's tied to history or tied to, recent events or tied to, academic research or something that shows me that it's grounded in something. That's where I look. So I'm not sure if I even answered your question. I'm constantly
I
reading things.
think it's such a hard thing because you can't be like it's XYZ because there are so many things coming up all the
I
time.
mean,
Like,
I
you
would stick
like,
I would
oh,
stick to, like, the mainstream. I know mainstream, news outlets don't always strike the right tone and kind of sometimes have the wrong tone. I'm thinking of the New York Times, absolutely, like, just, like, failing to meet the moment with the way it talks about some pretty serious, scary things and downplaying things for this seriousness, for how bad they are, but always the New York Times and the Washington Post are pretty good. But, like, honestly, the Huffington Post, not to toot our horn, but, like, we have very solid reporters who are experienced in this work and who are very well connected to their beats, to people who work on things that we talk about, to people who are at institutions, people on the street. We're very good at like interviewing, just talking to people affected by things going on. So just real people being able to share their own experience with things. Just look for stories that are actually like tied to facts and tied to people doing real reporting. That's where I go. And stories that are compelling that feel like they matter. They're not making trying to create a problem where there isn't one. Like I'm thinking of like attacks on trans people right now. Like uh, don't look for stories that are trying to make, have the lavender scare or the trans scare. Stories that like stories about things that like, oh, like trans people, they all regret like transitioning or there's like all kinds of ways people talk about issues like trans related issues. And I'm not interested in stories that are just like it's like they have a goal of trying to they have they start out with a story they want to write and then they work backwards versus following the story and seeing where it takes you. You know what
got
I
it.
mean? Like you don't
Yeah.
start out with a preconceived notion of your story. You talk to people, you talk to smart people, you talk to people affected by things, you talk to researchers, and then your story is there because you've pieced things together that are valid sources.
Right. It's like, it's exactly reminding me of like a crime show where they're like, they've decided somebody's guilty. So they're going to find all the pieces to make them
Yeah, it's
guilty.
like, do you ever watch Only Murders in the Building?
Yes, I love it.
Like, there's been so many times where you're like, "Oh my god, it's that person, isn't it?" And it's like, "No, it's not. It's that person." And then it's like, "No, it's not." But, like, obviously the show is structured to make you sort of think it's someone based on certain clues, but it's never that person. And then, like, 7 people later, you're like, "Oh my god, it was the stage
Never would have known.
singer." You know? But it's sort of like that. It's like you have to I read I'm drawn to articles that dig in and have, like, real reporting with solid sources. That's it. And are compelling, that are well written.
Yeah.
So
Well, we really appreciate your time. We being me and my mom, who's going to definitely watch, but hopefully there's a few
I'm
more.
very happy to be here with you guys.
I'm so glad. I can't thank you enough, and I will hopefully be visiting you soon, but I'll give you notice more than this. This isn't like me just showing up at your door.
Of course, you can come anytime.
Oh, you know I'm going. Great. Thank you so much. I'm sorry if we held you up to submitting your story.
You guys did not hold me up.
Goodbye. Have a great day.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Well, that's it for today. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Roar. Huge thanks to our guest, Jennifer Bendery, for sharing her insights and pulling back the curtain on the stories shaping our country, whether we see them on the front pages or not. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share Roar with a friend who needs to hear it. Every single review and share helps amplify these important conversations. And come on back next week when I'm talking to author Kirsten Miller, whose books The Change and Lula Dean's Little Library of Banned Books are both unputdownable. While we mostly dive into patriarchy, power, and the incredible work she's doing through her newsletter to support women and girls, reading the books wouldn't hurt. Trust me, you'll be glad you did.